Cold Shock, a 25I-NBOH trip report by Nervewing, posted to earwid.org June 30th, 2017. T plus 0 hours. 1 tab in the mouth, bitter taste, numbing flavour, pretty much like any N-bomb. T plus 20 minutes. I can feel something building. It's like there is buzzing through my body and energy is building throughout my veins. T plus 40 minutes. Start to notice visuals. Blank surfaces appear to have more depth and texture to them, and they begin to look more colourful. I start getting a more intense body load in the form of slight nausea and really intense shaking. My jaws are beginning to clench, and all my muscles are starting to feel twitchy and uncomfortable. Soon, it feels as if the building energy and the building psychedelia have overflowed and spilled over. The dam breaks, and it hits me all at once. I am buffeted by the surge, as the faint patterns and spiralling grow in intensity, dancing over every surface. I'm shaking so hard, I begin to get paranoid I'm noticeably shaking the entire house. I feel cold and shivery, but hot and sweaty at the same time. T plus 50 minutes. The body load becomes extremely uncomfortable. I've read a lot of trash talking on the NBOH series before this, and I'm starting to understand where they were coming from. My body just cannot sit still. It feels like there is lightning coursing through my veins and muscles. The patterns continue to grow in intensity. Spirals twirl across every surface, splattering the world with rainbow traces. The white lights of my keyboard are spinning off rainbows as the text and images on the screen begin to warp and melt and leak even more colours. I decide to lie down under blankets to try to take some deep breaths and stave off the body load. T plus 55 minutes. I begin to breathe deeply and focus on keeping my body still, and for the most part it works. I close my eyes and am greeted by an infinite, three-dimensional world of colourful fractals and spirals. I open my eyes, and the dark room is dominated by flashing bullseye patterns and snowflake patterns in a rainbow of contrasting colours. Mentally, I don't feel very different. I'm still lucid and thinking straight. All my thought processes are proceeding as normal, just with intense visual stimulation. I stand up and return to my computer, floating the whole way there amidst a galaxy of pulsing colours. T plus 1 hour, the visuals turn synesthetic and begin to dance with the music, dots and colours, and circles spinning and swirling and pulsing to the beat. The music begins to take on a strange, tinny, artificial sound, like it's being played through the chopping of fan blades. I'm overcome with a wave of great sweet euphoria that I could only describe as colourful due to the fact that the body load seems to have fallen away. T plus 1 hour and 10 minutes. I begin to feel more impaired. The room is swirling and rocking like I'm on a boat. Every thought suddenly explodes into a chain of more thoughts. My mind becomes scrambled trying to pursue each one of them. The fountains of thought are exploding in turn from each one to obscure any sort of conclusion. It is an inescapable mess of a positive feedback loop. I close my eyes and allow myself to become immersed in intense closed-eye visuals to try and sort this out. While my eyes are closed, it feels like I'm repeatedly having a really bright light flashed against my eyelids. I sit there for what seems like half an hour with my eyes closed, eventually stringing my tangled thought processes together into straight cut paths where they can flow freely and no longer redundantly coil in on themselves. I open my eyes, calm and focused, and notice only 3 minutes have passed. Oh. T plus 1 hour and 20 minutes. Auditory hallucinations become marked. I turn off my music, which is beginning to echo and sound unnervingly robotic and artificial, and sit there to appreciate the sounds of the world. There is a beeping sound that resembles the chirping of birds resonating through my room. The sound of my fan, which is usually one steady block of white noise, begins to raise and lower in pitch, sounding like it's pulsing through the room in sine waves. More strange beeping and chirping noises begin to crawl out of the corners of my auditory environment, entering my ears and bouncing off each other and dancing and synesthizing into visuals around me. For the next half hour or so, I alternate between using the computer and lying on my bed when the body load comes back. I notice it coming in waves and alternating in strength. Eventually, the people I'm talking to begin to drop off and go to sleep. At one point, I'm lying on my bed, my laptop is closed, and my phone is no longer buzzing, and I suddenly feel so alone. The last time I tripped alone in my room, I was talking to people until sunrise. This time, however, there is no one and nothing. I suddenly realise how alone I feel without technology. Without this constant connection to people, everything feels cold and desolate, and I realise how addicted I've become to constant human interaction. T plus 1 hour and 50 minutes. I go downstairs to grab my jacket. I don't feel very impaired and my thought processes are proceeding logically and normally, but I have a lot of trouble walking and balancing. My living room, lit up only by streetlights, becomes a world of red and blue double images like in old 3D movies. In my basement, everything is overtaken by rainbow ghost images. I run upstairs and grab my cat on the way up, his fur swirling and warping. Climbing the stairs in the dark holding a cat while tripping too hard to have balance proves to be exceedingly stressful. I pretty much hold my breath the whole way up, heart racing with what is probably unhealthy intensity. By the time I finally reach the top, I have to collapse in a chair and I am hyperventilating. In the darkness of my room, my cat's entire substance soon becomes a field of chomping teeth, sinister and very dark. This freaks me out, so I put him down. But the hallucination spreads, and all around me in the dark are mouths of glimmering white and faintly red teeth biting at me. This doesn't really bother me that much anymore, and it eventually fades away. T plus 2 hours and 10 minutes. My thoughts are beginning to uncontrollably chain again, and I browse the internet taking extreme interest in every little detail and every little thing that could possibly distract me. In the end, I have about 10 tabs open to various things that have caught my interest. It's the same attention to detail and insatiability that weed gives me, amplified 1,000-fold. I end up focusing on one thing, a random girl's Instagram. I actually forget how I found it. I think I was just clicking the comments in an advertisement I saw. But I soon found out that I am pretty much able to witness her entire life unfold on this one piece of social media. I watch her begin as an innocent teenager taking pictures of her pets, who then gets really into partying and raving. Soon are pictures of bong hits and acid tabs and sweaty, scantily clad people at music festivals. Then, pictures of large sums of money from dealing drugs and stripping, and the large amounts of drugs she moved. Then, her as a full-time professional stripper. I just found it so fascinating, and I connected so empathically with this random person. It amazed me how easy it was to witness every detail of a total stranger's life, and I was just amazed at how it felt like I knew exactly how a life unfolded. The most absurd part is through all of this, I wasn't even able to discern what her name was. Body load is all but gone at this point. Visuals still powerful and universal, however auditory hallucinations are now gone. T plus 3 hours and 20 minutes. After that whole adventure, the next 3 hours are just more chasing random details and distractions. Visuals are still going strong, not all-consuming as they were before, but impossible to ignore. Aztec-like patterns breathe on every surface and emit impossible rainbows of colour. T plus 6 hours and 10 minutes. I decide to smoke a bowl as I watch the sunrise. This kicks everything back into gear. The visuals suddenly become prominent and solid again, appearing bright and three-dimensional. The clouds outside that are lit by the glowing rising sun begin to dance and form into shapes and recede into the distance. I take a shower. Each drop of water is a sphere of rainbow colours, and I become entranced by an architectural visual in the floor of my bathtub. It appears like I am lying in a courtyard, looking up into the sky. The roofs of buildings framing it, except I am standing up and looking down, making it appear like the sky and buildings are in the floor. I finish up and dry myself off with a towel that is swirling and crawling all around me. I bundle up and decide to take a walk on this frigid winter day amongst the snow. It is about 8 AM now. T plus 6 hours and 40 minutes. I walk around town, and visuals are only apparent anymore when I stop and stare at anything. I feel very lucid and in control, but while walking, I'm struck by a tidal wave of empathy. I suddenly feel this immense guilt and sadness for past actions and unfair ways I have treated people, mostly a certain person, in my past. I started tearing up while walking around, which became pretty uncomfortable when the tears froze, I must say. The rest of the walk was alternating intense sadness and remorse, and explosive confidence and unfounded feelings of self-worth. When I get back to my house, I look to the sky to see the clouds appear to be rushing and shrinking and receding into the distance. T+8 hours. Visuals still dance around my field of vision. I'm talking to several people and trying to present myself as moral or empathic or something. I feel like I have the confidence to understand people's feelings and connect with them. It really doesn't end up working in the end. I drift around for a while on my inflated ego. At T+11 hours, I can say I've returned to baseline at this point. Feelings of confidence and connection and empathy have been replaced with dulled feelings of bleak sadness and regret, and a deep-set boredom and self-loathing as usual. I guess nothing ever sticks, does it? In conclusion, I can't really see any permanent psychedelic therapy uses for this one. As well, it does fill the user with beautiful, colourful empathy while it lasts. It eventually fades to the exact same state as before. Afterglow is negligible. That might just be me though, I guess. What I will say though, is how it had the most beautiful and intense visuals of any trip I had experienced. I would use this to go on an adventure somewhere to make the world look more interesting. I would take it again, but just for how it alters perception. Cognitive and emotional effects were interesting and noteworthy, but don't seem to contribute developmentally. It lasts longer than the N-bombs I've taken too, which was nice. And I also noticed that unlike N-bombs, which usually prey on my self-loathing and intensify it, this one had more of a confident and reasonable remorse effect. I found that it didn't just cast unfounded hatred upon myself, but made me feel more empathetically and justifiably wrong about things that needed to be addressed. I know a lot of you really enjoyed the last video, which talked about LSZ's or LSZ's relationship to LSD and exploring how analogues and similarly chemically structured substances can have actual varying different degrees of effects based upon certain people's responses to the substances. Some people will just get a completely identical trip on LSD to LSZ, or 25I-NBOH to, I don't know, say 25I-NBOMe, which it is a closely related analogue of. So, according to Psychonaut Wiki, 25I-NBOH, also known as 2CI-NBOH, NBOH 2CI, and Climby-27, or Climby-27, is a novel synthetic psychedelic substance of the phenethylamine class. I always, just as a little tangent, vary between saying phenethylamine or phenethylamine. How do you pronounce it? Just curious about that. I automatically go to phenethylamine. It just sounds right to me. This is the thing when you read into all these substances and just anything really technical. God, there's some, as we would say in English class, in the UK, tier 3 vocabulary, just next, like the highest, the S tier terms and vocab related to a particular subject. So I learn a lot of new words and pronunciations of words through people's responses to the videos. I always seem to get American town names completely wrong. That always, or like Tucson, was it Tucson, Arizona, which is apparently Tucson. When I say Tucson, all I think about is the place in The Witcher 3 DLC, Blood and Wine, Tucson. But, wow, what a tangent. The name 25I-NBOH, which shorthand for 2CI-NBOH, is a derivative of the phenethylamine psychedelic 2CI. It was first synthesized and documented in 2006 by a team at Purdue University, led by David Nichols. Interestingly, in the last video, Purdue University was also responsible for synthesizing and documenting LSD, so they're obviously the team there is obviously very interested in synthesizing new substances and researching their effects in a scientific manner, which I've gone on many tangents before about science and the limitations of it, but you must respect the actual scientific work. There's a lot of work and a lot of passion that goes into researching and understanding these substances on the scientific level, because there's many ways we can understand substances and the interactions they have with us from a mystical point of view, a scientific point of view. And not every one is right or wrong, or completely truthful. It seems like a mix of all of them, but I obviously always gravitate more towards the mystical phenomena rather than the scientific pursuit of psychedelics, because that's just who I am on a biased level. I am more biased towards metaphysical, mystical stuff than I am scientific, grounded, rational, logical stuff, which I do also appreciate and respect. So David E. Nichols, who is one of the pharmacologists and medicinal chemists at Purdue University, he's actually responsible for creating the 25X-NBOMe family, as well as LSD, creating escalin, studying various psychoactive substances, studying MDMA toxicity, and coining the term entactogen. So a entactogen, also known as empathogens, are a class of psychoactive substances that produce distinctive emotional and social effects similar to those of MDMA. The term empathogen was coined in 1983 by Ralph Metzner to denote chemical agents capable of inducing feelings of empathy. I've used the word empathogen many times before, describing MDMA-type substances, and if you want to put MDMA into a class, I would call it an empathogen if someone was asking me what it was. It's more, it's to say it's an empathogen seems like a more nuanced definition than calling it a stimulant, because if you lump it in with other stimulants like cocaine and amphetamines, MDMA is much different to those. There isn't just a stimulating effect to it, there's this empathic effect and even this transcendental effect to MDMA, whereas cocaine and amphetamines and stimulants are very much just stimulating, unless you have some crazy effect. Like that one time I covered the woman who had loads of cocaine, and I think there was some sleep deprivation involved there, where she actually had a hallucinatory mystical experience. So not to say that all cocaine users don't have some form of transcendental experience, although I would never recommend to pursue transcendental states through cocaine at all. That's a fool's errand, I believe. But entactogen was coined by David E. Nichols as an alternative to empathogen, attempting to avoid the potential for an improper association of the latter with negative connotations related to the Greek root pathos, or suffering. See, you learn something new every day, don't you? I had no idea about that. Rather fascinating, to be honest. To fly back over to the 25I-NBOH article from psychonautwiki.org, it has been studied in its 11C radio-labelled form as a potential ligand, for mapping the distribution of 5-HT2A receptors in the brain, using positron emission tomography, or PET. Extremely little is known about the pharmacological properties, metabolism, and toxicity of 25I-NBOH in humans. It has no history of human use before being sold online as a designer drug in 2011. See, that's also fascinating, isn't it? That, say, Purdue University and David Nichols and anyone who was involved in synthesizing all these substances synthesized them and researched them without taking them. I assume that's the case. If this is to be believed here, that there's no history of human use before it got sold online as a designer drug. This is also another common thread you see, that so many times these substances are researched and developed within sort of private laboratories at universities and done purely for the sake of science, and then it starts to slip into the underworld of sort of illegal chemistry, and then it enters the streets and becomes, say, a designer drug where it can pass off as a research chemical or designer drug. It's just two different names for the same thing, which just basically refers to substances which have just a minor amount of medicinal use and unstudied effects. So research chemicals typically have structures and effects similar to illicit substances, and often develop to either improve upon their effects or bypass existing drug laws. So research chemicals are often in a grey area of the law for quite a while, and you often can buy them from online vendors because you can. They're not legally imposed upon by, say, the government because there's no laws because you have to keep passing new laws to control these substances, or, well, criminalize these substances, which is what always ends up happening. But they keep getting made. There's so many different research chemicals that come out every single week or day or whatever that most governments can find it hard to catch up with banning certain substances. And many of them, say like 1-VLSD, was semi-legal. Well, you could get it without breaking the law for quite a long time until this passed certain laws in certain countries that inhibited the development and sale of that substance, and this happens to all sorts of substances. It's rather interesting, to be honest. Anyway, in conclusion, 25I-NBOH is closely related to members of the 25X-NBOMe series, specifically 25I-NBOMe. If you know me, you've known that I've taken 25I a few times, or something that was in the NBOMe family. I'm going to call it NBOMe here for the sake of my own vocal cords. So I'd go to festivals, specifically Leeds Festival, where 25I or 25X chemicals seem to be rampant through all of the dealers that I'd end up finding at Leeds Festival. And me and my mates would oftentimes just take anything. If it was on a tab, we would just take it. And this produced some crazy experiences that my consciousness has gone through, and also seen my friends gone through at these festivals. Because some people seem to react quite well to these 25X-NBOMe series, despite, I would say, don't bother taking... if you take a tab and you notice that it's bitter, I would spit it out immediately, because it very much can result in injury and death at 25I, unlike, say, LSD, where the LD50 rate, or range, which means the a dose range where you'll die from a certain consumable thing. Can be water, can be anything. Look up LD50 water. So yeah, LD50 from 25I is much lower than, say, LSD, and it's just going to be more intense and probably physically uncomfortable. So I would just personally avoid these types of research chemicals. You should really be testing your stuff 100% if you're interested in any of this. You don't really know what you're getting when someone just gives you a tab. It could be anything. Again, all these different analogues of LSD. What you're getting on a tab isn't just going to be LSD-25, the classic chemical that we think of when we think of LSD. I mean, it is LSD, isn't it? It just is what it is. But there's so many different liquid-based LSD type or 25X-NBOMe type substances that you can put on a tab, and you just don't know what you're getting. You think you're taking 25I, and whatever you want to take it, you're interested in it, regardless of how I would advise you to take substances. Some people are just going to take it out of curiosity, and that's just the way things are. But some people will take these substances thinking it's 25I, and they're actually taking, I don't know, a 25C, just because it feels similar physically, experientially to 25I that you may have taken in the past and known it was that. If you don't test it, you don't know really, do you? So that's just something to bear in mind, that you really don't know what you're getting with any substances, regardless of what form they may come in: tab, powder, fucking microdots. You really don't know what you're getting until you literally sit down and test it and get a good reagent test kit. It's really heavily advised if you want to do this stuff safely, and don't let your curiosity kill the cat that is you, my friend. Anyway, in conclusion, 25I-NBOH has been closely related to members of the 25X-NBOMe series, specifically 25I-NBOMe, which has been associated with many deaths and hospitalizations. Anecdotal reports suggest that this substance may be difficult to use safely due to its highly sensitive dose response and unpredictable effect. Lots of interesting information there. I find it fascinating that while it's an analogue of 25I-NBOMe, it is actually synthesized as a derivative of the phenethylamine psychedelic 2CI, which we've covered many times in the past. Another substance I don't know if I've ever taken before, but again, just to tie it back in with testing stuff, how many times I've been sold 2CB at festivals, raves, or wherever, or even just finding it myself. Buying it off someone who probably doesn't test the stuff, because at the end of the day, some dealers will just say, yeah, test it bro, don't worry, it's pure AF this. You really don't know whether they're telling the truth or not, regardless of your relationship with them, because you can have this relationship with dealers and drug sellers of any kind, especially when it's in person on the street, that you get to know and they become your friend, and you think that they are 100% trustworthy with what they're saying and would never mess you about or sell you dodgy stuff. And they might even be completely truthful to themselves that, yeah, they think that is the case. They think that it is, say they're giving you a tab, and they do think 100% it is LSD 25, unless they're actually doing the work, like testing it themselves with a test kit, and even maybe like personally taking it themselves and trying it out and seeing how it is. Most of the time, dealers are just getting a batch of stuff in and just selling it off, and that's just the way things are, regardless of how close you might be with them and trust them and have these ideas about how they operate. You don't actually know, do you? Would I take 25I-NBOH? I wonder if there's a 25I-NBOH. There probably is, or if it's not already out there, it's being made right now somewhere in some laboratory in Amsterdam or wherever. Or in the case of this, at a university in the United Kingdom. But would I take it? Probably not, to be honest. Really not interested in taking research chemicals anymore. I think I'm past that point in my life where I'm interested in trying all these different exotic substances that have similarities and wild differences to ones that I've taken before. I don't know. I've experimented so much that I feel like the experimental phase of my life is over, and if I am to use psychedelics, it's going to be with my trusted old buddies, DMT, LSD, psilocybin, and if I was ever to try a new psychedelic, it would probably just be mescaline, or maybe another chemical in the 2CX family, because I do have a very good relationship with 2CB, and that would be interesting to compare, but I have no interest in comparing 25I-NBOH with 25I-NBOMe, let me tell you. As much as I enjoyed my 25I-NBOMe experiences, I was also very lucky in that it didn't mess me up, which I have seen it mess up people within my own life. So yeah, that for me would be something I'd just leave to the imagination and explore through, say, videos like this, because I learned so much about these substances as much as you do. So for me, it's satiating my curiosity without me actually having this drive and an insatiable desire to take them myself. Just as a little addendum to this commentary section, I'd like to talk about just an experience this guy had during his trip in this report, Nervewing, who, as we know, has written so many of the reports that I've covered on this channel, because I think he really has a great way of articulating his experience in a sort of logical, structured manner, but also having the ability to weave in nuanced but easily understandable explanations of the phenomenological effects, the first-hand experience effects of substances, and even delving into sort of the mystical type explanations and descriptions that we've come to know and love through this channel, really, because that's, again, I say that what is Vivek? It's an exploration of the mystical experience through the lens of substance use, really. That's what I'd say the most of the channel is about, really, and everything else just sort of splinters off from there, that I think weaves back in. But he had an experience in this trip report that I could really relate to, where, say, I've been going on a rabbit hole on psychedelics, of just being enamoured and obsessed with every little detail of just what my consciousness is experiencing, especially if I'm online or something. This would be in the points of the trip, say in an LSD trip, where I'm winding down and I just have this intense fascination for life, because I guess the peak's gone and I'm starting to come back to the human realm, or whatever you want to call it. And then I'll go on, I don't know, just go on like some weird Facebook or Instagram rabbit hole and go just click on some random person and go and like check out their whole life if they got some public profile. And you can really just in that moment get a sense of like who they are, and to get this little slither of like what it's like to be them. And that whole notion of sort of putting yourself in their shoes through the sort of life that they've curated for people to see online is fascinating enough when you're sober, but if you're on a psychedelic substance and your consciousness is expanded, that experience of experiencing someone else through their life that they've displayed online is intensified and amplified to a profound degree, and it can really form this empathetic sense of connection between yourself and other, and it can be quite beneficial for your cognitive functions, your ability to empathize and relate to others and interact, and just generally put yourself in other shoes more easily, which allows you to socialize better and understand people more and develop deeper, greater senses of love with the other, whatever the other is. But anyway, guys, hope you enjoyed this little look at 25I-NBOH, and I'd like to do more videos in the vein of this one and the last one, where I compare and contrast analog substances with their sort of progenitors. But until then, hope you all take care, have a lovely night, whatever you're doing, sweet dreams, God bless, and I'll see you on the other side.